If there's one thing we've learned about business and life, it's that people are the X factor. They constantly surprise us, both in amazing ways and not so much. We're Ben and Syya, and welcome to the Gnaw on This Business Bites podcast. This show is all about real life things we all deal with every day, how they relate to business, and how to make some sense out of our daily chaos. Welcome to the show. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Gnaw on This Business Bites. I'm Ben, and this is Syya. This week, I want to talk about the human side of data. Numbers don't replace context. Really simple. Let me bring this down to you. Human experience matters. Just because the data says one thing, it is based on sometimes false information. Garbage in, garbage out. How well did your sales team put that information in the CRM? How up to date is your information? How much are your clients actually telling you that's true? And how much are they leaving out? Are you asking the right questions? All that information gets put into the database, turned into an Excel spreadsheet, and say, oh, it must be true. It's data. Data is not always the whole answer. We need to have context. We need to talk to people on the floor, people running the shift, people that are sending stuff out the door, people that are on the customer experience side, people that are on the sales and marketing side and communication side, people that are dealing on the invoicing side and the accounts payable and accounts receivable. We need to talk to people out throughout our organization and say, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are people saying? And what are people saying about us? What's going on Reddit? What's going on Glassdoor? And all this information is being able to sit there and say, what are people telling us versus what are people saying when we're not in the room? And we need to be able to sit there and differentiate and realize, customers don't tell the whole truth. Salespeople don't always put all the information into the database. Information gets missed. Stuff gets whitewashed as it heads up the corporate ladder. All of this is reality. We don't want to hear all this, but it's true. And the more we can sit there and take all this data and put a human face to it and sit there and say, you know what? That doesn't jive with the last 3 customer meetings that I had. That didn't jive with the last 3 trade shows that I went to. That didn't jive with what people are actually buying and the stuff that's going out the door and how people are receiving it when it gets into their warehouse. We need to be able to take the information that we have it stored in our CRMs and our databases, in our ERPs, etc., and be able to sit there and say, how does that jive with what we see in reality with our own eyes and ears? So, Syya, let's gnaw on this.
So I was, I don't know if you saw me typing up here, because as we're talking, you made me think about this quote. And the one that came up is, facts are stubborn things, but statistics are pliable. I guess it's a tribute to Mark Twain.
Mm-hmm.
Facts is subjective too. In the context of, I'm not talking about 1 + 1 = 2. I'm talking about, when we submit data into some kind of machinery that pulls all that data together and compiles it and draws it up and develops some kind of analysis based on it, it's only good, like you say, garbage in, garbage out kind of vibe. And I find it fascinating that we rely on so many statistics, particularly, oh, I said that right, didn't I? Particularly.
You did. Yes, you did.
Yeah, celebrate this day. Particularly around facts that we personally agree with our personal opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm laughing a little bit about it because, yes, the facts of which we are, relying on for, in general, it can be a great way to bring people together, right? Build a community of like-minded people because you all want to agree on the same facts and whatnot. But I do think that the over reliance on those factoids and espousing it as like the end all be all, it is concerning at times, especially in an age where we are starting to be more and more reliant on data being given to us versus
Hmm.
us being curious to curate the data to make sure it's accurate, correct, and at least whatever information you get it from, you know the motivations around why the results came out to be. Does that make
Yes,
sense? And I've been trying to dance around it in a way because the first thing that popped in my mind is like, anything that you think about politics, we could find the data to match what we're talking about, right?
absolutely. Left,
But
right, up, down, whatever. You can always find stuff that matches your particular point of view. You can always find a
100%.
study that will support your view of reality.
And it might give your experience based on that fact what you want to make out of it. So from a business perspective, when we think about all the number crunching that we do, whether you're in marketing or if you're in HR trying to gather the health of the company culture and whatnot, right? The truth of the matter is we have to think about again, those numbers might be great. I'm going back to salespeople. I'm sorry, it's my background, but like I've seen and I've experienced it with my friends where they sales department gets bottom 10% gets cut.
Oh,
Period. End
absolutely.
of. Bottom 10 performance people out the door, and it's like, whoa, well, what if you're in an organization where you're hot, 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 and yeah, the bottom 10% is still performing at 120% of quota, right? Like it's relative, but it's also like, wait a second, like what taste, aftertaste are you leaving
Hmm.
in your consumption of all this analytics? So I am trying to speak cryptically and generally, but I feel like I'm being a little too general here. It's like this. When you are going to the movie theater, for example, and they do polls all the time. Did you like our experience? Rank 5 stars here. Or Open Table does this all the time as an app. Did
Absolutely.
you like the experience dining with this place? Feed us that data. I get it why they do it, but at the same time too, it's like you already asked me in the beginning, you're asking me again. Like now you're annoying me. So does that make sense? It's like
Yeah.
knowing time and place, but also are you giving the people what they want, not what you want?
Well, first of all, and you bring up the right thing. Are we asking people the right questions to gather the right information?
Yeah.
You know, are we phrasing things in such a way that are subjective or objective? Are we phrasing things in things where people either have the ability to say binary, either yes or no? Were you happy with us? Yes. Well, I don't care if you were happy with us. Why were you happy with us? Who were you happy with? Who was the sales rep that you had? What did they do to make you happy? What did they do to piss you off? What did they do to frustrate you? What did they do to make your life easier? And the problem is we're creating surveys and we're creating because it's easier to put a 1 through 5. It's easier to put a yes or no because all those become easy data points. When we sit there and say, what did you like about our customer service? And then give somebody a box where they can put in 500 words, that's a trickier thing. Your data analysts don't like that because all of a sudden everything's subjective. And it's the nuance. It's the finite little pieces within that 500 words that make it either better or worse. And I think that we need to be able to sit there and say, with AI, we have the ability to disseminate that information as well, to sit there and say, okay, based on these 1,000 responses, look at this information within box A, give me a synopsis of how people feel, and be able to take those 1,000 pieces of 500 words and be able to make some cohesive information based on that is going to be far more than just a yes or a no.
Right.
And I think that as humans, and we come back to the word curiosity, we need to be far more curious about why this is happening instead of you know whether we got the right information or not. What is that information telling us based on my bias, based on your bias, based on the fact that we only asked 30 people and we're making the assumptions of how that's going to reflect on 30,000. So there's so much questions that we need to be asking, and we need to be able to move beyond the simplistic and into the point where we're asking the right questions and asking it in the right way and using our brains to sit there and say, okay, what does that really mean?
Yep. What does it mean?
What it means is that, as you said, we're going for the easy button. Everybody wants the easy button. Anybody wants to say, it says 4 out of 5 people love us, so therefore we must be doing well. Well, guess what? The problem is people fill out a survey because they either really like the service or they really hate the service,
Or
which
or they
means,
got or they got incented for
or they
fries.
got incentive, or they got incentive. But rarely are you going to see a 3 out of 5. If you
Yeah.
incentivize somebody, they're probably going to give you a 5. They're not going to give you a 1. So
Well, no, no. I would argue they're gonna give you a 1 or a 5. Rarely is it like, I'm gonna take my time and say you're average. Meh.
yeah,
Like
that's your average.
I'm
You're
mad at you or I'm loving you. That's what I
exactly.
argue. Yeah.
So therefore, those 80% of the people that sit in the middle that were like, it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. It was okay, but this is too much effort for me to fill out this, to click this one button. You're missing those people. You're missing the people that either love you or hate you. And the 80% of the people that, you know, probably are going to pick up and go somewhere else because it was all right, but certainly if somebody gives me better service or a better product, are being ignored, and we're not bringing that information into the decision making process. We're not looking at the data saying not only what is it telling us, but what is it not telling us. And I
Yeah.
think that that's the problem, is that as much the data that we collect doesn't tell us as much as we think it does, or it tells us far less than we think it is. It's creating assumptions, it's creating biases. And those assumptions and biases lead to companies making huge mistakes that cost millions of dollars.
That's true. That's true. God, you got me thinking, man.
And what are you thinking about?
So it's got me thinking, Ben.
Yes.
The thing about the nuances of all this data that we're talking about, shoot, because it's making me think about, again, going back to analysis paralysis that we talked about before. Kind of,
Yeah.
it's
But they are involved with each other. I mean, analysis paralysis and the human factor of data have a lot to do with each other. They
right. But I'm
really,
wondering,
they really truly do. I mean, look, think of it this way, and then I'll let you get back to your thought process. Is that when we overcomplicated data, when we are sitting there going, okay, wait a second here, we're looking at the data and we're going, wait a second, this doesn't jive. This, for some reason, something in the back of our mind, the spidey sense goes off, something goes wrong, and we go, wait a second here, I need more data.
yeah,
It says I need more data. I can't make a decision because I don't have enough information to move forward. But the challenge lies in the fact is that we may not need more data, we need better data.
I
And
think
and
that's
I
yes,
and I and
that's
I'm a big believer, if we don't ask the right questions. We don't ask the questions in the right way. We don't ask the right type of questions. We don't ask them to the right people. Our sample sizes are too small, and we've already created a bias by the way that we ask the questions to begin with.
that's exactly what I was going to point out. Is the questions that we ask aren't geared towards the answers to the questions. The questions that we are answers aren't geared towards the audience of which we are speaking with. So again, you can have a ton of questions and you can fill up a data set full of statistics, right? That seem attractive, look attractive, etc. But if the questions that were designed for it were not built with the audience in mind, those questions aren't what that audience would have asked for.
Yeah. And that's where the human ability to sit there and say, wait a second here, this doesn't make sense. I'm looking
Right.
at all this data and I'm going, based on what I know about my customers, based on what I'm seeing in the marketplace, based on what I'm hearing out there from clients and other vendors, this doesn't jibe. Because I mean, look at AI today, and you ask AI a question, and all of a sudden it hallucinates.
Yep.
If you don't know it's hallucinating, you're going to assume that it's right. You're going to assume that that information is correct, and you're going to go ahead and move forward based on incorrect hallucinating information.
Yep.
But people that sit there and go, wait a second here, that can't be right. Hey, ChatGPT, hey, Gemini, hey, Claude,
Whatever.
whatever. I think you've missed something. I think you really didn't get da 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 da. Da. Maybe let's take a look at it this way. And Claude goes, "Oh, I think you're right. Now let's go in and look at it this way." But if you don't have the contextual background to basically say, "Hey, wait a second here, this data set doesn't make any sense,"
Mm-hmm.
you're going to make assumptions based on bad data that are going to create lots of havoc within your organization.
I'm sorry, you made me laugh again. I'm so in like, you know what? I'm in a happy mode today. This week is going to be amazing week, everyone. And I'll close it off with this. When I see my chat hallucinating, I always be like, it's just funny. Cause I talk very conversationally with my chat.
Yes.
I'm like, what are you smoking? Literally, I'm like, what are you smoking? And then like I've trained my chat to be like, that's my cue of like when they're going off on like rand. I'm
Yeah.
like, what the heck just happened here? It always comes back with thank you for pulling me back to earth or some stuff. But yeah, I said what are you smoking has been the big one. But anyway,
There you go.
yes, and I think that that's where I think it's good for us to look. And I know where we started off with data in general, but ultimately, and is if we want that output of all that data that we're working with, there's got to be a human interaction of some sort, either in the input of the data, in the manipulation of the data, and then the reception of the output of that data. And I think that's where I'm taking away our conversation today. Though I will tell you, I think I hallucinated a few times today, and which is normal, which is normal. But yeah, no, this is a very this one I'd like to chew on. I'd like to know on this one a little bit more.
All right. Let's leave it there. Hey, everybody, I'm Ben,
Oh wait, I'm Sia.
and we'll see you soon.
Hey, hey, hey! Thanks for listening to another episode of Not on This Business Bites. If you liked what you heard, we most humbly ask that you like, share, and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to communicate more effectively within your organization, contact Ben at yourbrandmarketing.com or me at brilliantbeammedia.com. We can help you build your community, brand awareness, and personality through digital content and podcasting. We cannot wait to hear from you. So see you next week for another episode of Not on This Business Bites.